We want to call to order the Strategic Planning Committee meeting of Tuesday, September 3rd, 2013. Invocation and pledge by Ms. Gazzo.
Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together this evening to do the work of Ascension Parish. We pray your blessing upon those here and within the sound of our voice who love and respect the people of this parish, and we ask you to cast blessings upon them. If there is anyone in need tonight, we ask your blessing on them, Father, and particularly those who are suffering from illness. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. All committee members are present. Public comment period. Anyone wishing to address any of the agenda items, please sign a public comment card, and you will be allowed to speak at the appropriate time. Number 4, discussion of grass cutting on the East Bank and A-Bend area. And before we get into that, Parish President, I know we've done a pilot plan with mostly in Council District 1. Since we've started that, have we seen any problems with that issue?
I haven't seen any. We haven't had any problems. I don't know if we've done any at this point, but none of them have been reported to me. So that's the policy.
And I guess I think there was an issue with Mr. Parrington was talking about a collection issue.
Right. I don't know if we have clarified that part. We were hoping that we could put it on the tax rolls, actually. But by law, I think O'Neill can give you a little update on that. But by law, we can't force the sheriff or anybody else to collect something if it's not a tax, if it's only on a grass cutting deal. So we have a poor way of just adding it on to somebody's property as a lien, and most of the people, as we say, we never get paid back. So, but O'Neill, you can.
I did a little research on that. I mean, I suggest that we include in the ordinance that it be attached to the ad valorem taxes. But the sheriff is the ex officio tax collector. There's some cases out there that says this is not a tax. Some sheriffs collect, some don't. You can't make the sheriff collect this part of a tax. In the ordinance that we have for subdivisions, we have a 15% incentive, but it's never been, the sheriff has not collected it. I would suggest you include that in there. Otherwise, basically what you do is you get a lien on a piece of property. If there's ever a transaction of the property where it's being sold, then you get paid. A lot of times what occurs, these are properties that are not being taken care of, and we wind up with a foreclosure, and we become an inferior lien, and they go away. I mean, you'd have to go, the parish would have to go in and outbid the creditor, which we don't want to do.
Right.
So there are costs involved that we're not always being reimbursed on, and we're looking at ways to figure out how to do that. But that's the downfall of cutting grass and placing liens, is you may not get paid.
Well, and that's what we want to try to get all the information and see what realistically, what it would end up costing the people of the parish. Is there any means to utilize the parish court that we've established as a means of?
No, because basically all that does is give you a lien.
Okay.
You could have a judgment, same as the lien that we apply anyway.
Okay.
So we have the authority, by state law, you have the authority to file that lien. It's the collection of the liens that's the problem. Because a lot of times these are I don't know, say abandoned, but the reason the grass is high is because nobody's there. Ultimately, they get foreclosed upon, and we become an inferior lien.
And many a times these are adjudicated properties that we're trying to, and that's, I do want everyone to know we're trying to pursue getting in touch with some company that does adjudicated properties, try to relieve the parish of this. And so hopefully we'll have something in the next couple of months to have an option to help relieve the parish of some of the adjudicated properties. So we're trying to work on that.
We haven't signed anything to go and cut any grass, so I know we haven't had one test case yet.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why we didn't expand it right now. We're trying to do a pilot plan and see what the pitfalls in reality is going to be, because no one knows. No one's ever done this before in the parish. So, Mr. Gaza?
O'Neill, has the sheriff been asked whether he would be willing to?
I don't know, this is
Correct.
just, it's new to me.
And then we can ask that.
And he said,
We did not include the sheriff in this because we did not know that that was the proper procedure to do on that. We just thought it automatically went on that, so.
I mean, you can put it on the tax rolls, it's the question of collection. You can't mandate that he collect it, because it's not a tax. And I've done the research on that today, and I think, there was some question about that before, and I think there's the AG's opinion came out, there's an AG's opinion that even talks about it, and says there's a discrepancy between, two of the, statutes, regarding that. And so it's definitely, it's not a tax.
Well, surely after finding out that information, we'll sit down and discuss it with the sheriff and see. I mean, we haven't had, we wasn't brought, it wasn't brought to our knowledge that that was the procedure.
and I certainly understand why the sheriff would not want to put himself in a position where there are two
That's exactly right. So you got,
differing AG's opinions. I completely understand.
not only that, I mean, it's something that I think at one time they had to do it, but I think they had a law change to where they don't have to do it now.
There was a case out there that kind of said they had to, and it looks like the law has changed to say you collect, he's the ex officio tax collector.
Tax collector.
Ad valorem, he's entitled to collect all ad valorem property taxes, other taxes, he doesn't have to collect.
I would just like to encourage us to try to find a way to move forward. My district particularly is urbanized, for lack of a better word, and the members of my district are concerned that the property next door is grown up and the house is falling down, and these are abandoned properties. And I also want to make mention, and I want the public to be aware, we bring people into our parish from all over the world, literally, and we'll do more of that over the next decade, all over the world. And what they see when they drive down the road is this fallen down building with the grass grown up, and frankly, they cannot imagine that in a civilized community we live like this. We need to improve the way our community looks, and particularly in areas that border highly regions of our parish where people are our visitors and our guests. So, and for the sake, I have another problem with it. I think it encourages crime when the grass is all high and the house is falling down. Some kid is going to go in that house and they're going to do something they ought not do. So we need to be able to discourage that. So we have the public safety, we have the appearance of our parish, and then we have the technical issues about how to get it done. But I would love to see, if there's going to be a district on the East Bank where we could give it a try, I would love to try it in District 8, where my constituents by and large say to me that they would like to see the grass cut next door because the rats are bothering them.
Nobody's saying that you can't do this. Basically, what we're saying is that you probably won't get paid to do it. But if you choose if you want to do it, it's certainly something that's doable. I mean, it's basically the same thing that's what's gonna happen here, and you'll find this out next year. Basically, we've exhausted just about all of our appeals and questions and attempts to get DOTD to come up on our roads, and basically been told that they're not going to do it. So, they're going to stick with the price that they have now. And so the only thing that I've done is I've extended our contract to December, but after that, the contract's over with. And what you said about when you're coming into Ascension Parish, you're going to see that same situation on Airline Highway and some of your major arteries when we quit cutting the grass. So hate to do either one, but I mean, we keep spending money, and we have no, I mean, at some point you have to, I don't know, draw the line, I guess, and decide what your priorities are. And,
Well, in light of what you just said, I agree with you, because we have sewer that has to be a priority, and we have roads that have to be a priority.
So, I mean, you know,
all things that nobody's willing to pay for.
there's things that we can do. It's like we've been doing. You know, we've been subsidizing about $300,000 on state roads actually to cut them, and we can do the same thing with houses. I mean, we can go out and you can pass an ordinance and tell us we got to go cut them. Now it may be 100 years from now before we get paid if a piece of property sells or doesn't sell. But I agree with you as far as perception when you're coming into a parish or when you go riding around a road and you see a house in dismay and grass. Got a call, email from Doc last week about a house in a subdivision near his home, and we can only do so much from a legal standpoint. Now it's in a subdivision, so the grass finally got to a point to where we can go with that law. But again, we can cut the grass, but we can't go on somebody's private property and clean up his yard or do anything. So,
Right.
but you know, I don't have any problem with an ordinance as you speak, but I'm just cautioning about the cost.
Yeah, I do. I understand the cost. Terrible that we are in this situation, but at the same time, I think property values for our citizens are affected by these overgrown houses. Doc certainly has one in his community that's an issue. Can't sell the house because of the mess next door. So it's going to be a challenge, and I'd just like to see us move toward resolving it, one step at a time.
You still have, right, yeah, you can do it, you just gotta play, you know, we would be placing liens, the question is collecting the money. You know, it's basically a decision that you make, it's a decision, a policy decision you make, whether you wanna pay for it and not get paid. I mean, you can't do it without asserting the lien, because you can't do work on private property. The question is, collecting the liens is a problem.
So how much money do you think, Tommy, that we would have to set aside in the budget for this kind of work?
Depends, we'd have to get a contract with someone to cut the grass, and I mean, I would think on the big pieces of property, you're talking probably anywhere from 25 to 75,000 a year, depending on how it goes, and you would probably have repeat customers every year. So
That's
Yeah.
the problem.
Well,
They
if
don't do it
I
once, they don't
guarantee
do
you, if
it.
Coy thought you'd cut his grass, he'd let it grow.
right. So, but that's about what I mean. I have no idea at this point, but I would say somewhere in that range.
And as we do the budget process, we could maybe squeeze a
I'm
little.
doing the budget process right now. So
I know,
If
I
you want to move on something, this would be certainly a good time to do so.
Well, we will continue to try to move forward and solve these problems that we see, and like everything else, until you initiate these things, you rarely do you find out all the roadblocks that jump up in front of you.
Yeah, I'm fully cognizant of the obstacles.
Mr. Satterley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and O'Neill, thank you. But I know we discussed, O'Neill, please, just a quick question. We discussed in chambers earlier, I believe one of the councilmen asked you about how the cities do it, and I want to be sure I understood that. And to people listening, particularly the person in my district is probably listening very attentive this evening. They do it in cities because I believe you said instead of the sheriff collecting the taxes, they have their own person in incorporated cities to do this, and therefore.
The cities have their own tax collector for the in-city taxes, and I think that's how they go about doing it.
That's ad valorem, though.
Right, ad valorem, but they have city, the sheriff collects the parish, et cetera, ad valorem tax. The cities have their own taxes, their own ad valorem taxes, and their own city agencies
Okay,
collect.
and since these liens for grass cutting would not be taxes, could we, I think I know the answer to this, I just want it on the record, could we have a person, I know we'd have to pay that person, and I know Tommy probably has something to say about that, and that's good, to, you know, be like the city person for the parish, for the rural areas.
The only issue is this, is that how you collect, you wouldn't have the authority to sell it. See, they can sell it at a tax sale, you don't have the authority to do that.
So even if we had a personal collector for the rural areas of the parish, we still couldn't force a sheriff's sale of the property.
Right. You'd get a judgment against them.
And thus we have no more teeth than we have already.
Right. That's,
So my final question is, going forward, without any further research or anything, do you have any recommendations for this committee?
well, right
as to
now,
how we could solve this?
I think the only thing you can do right now is just continue to place the liens, and hope when property's transferred, you collect your liens. Or, you know, be able to convince the sheriff to let us, to collect them as a tax collector. He can do it, it's just it's a decision he's got to make.
Thank you.
And we will pursue that, obviously. We hadn't had a chance to involve the sheriff at all,
Right.
so we want to make sure everyone knows that this just recently came up to that. So we would initiate those discussions, and we'll also continue discussions when we found out that a majority of them are due to adjudicated property, which is not being utilized, a lot of times family property and stuff that has 40 heirs. And I know Jefferson Parish, Orleans Parish, St. Bernard Parish, I think is contracted with a company that takes care of the adjudicated properties, and it's been a very good thing for those parishes. So we're going to look into that. Okay. Yeah. So it'll be maybe another way to get around and assist in getting a mechanism to do that. So we'll let everybody know that we're trying to weed through the process in the parish.
Is that a plan?
Yeah, I guess that's a good part. Number 5, limitations on fill in the houses in the floodplain. This has been brought up in the past. Since that time, about 6 or 7 years ago, we had brought this up, and since that time, FEMA has increased the elevations on the floodplain maps and FEMA maps tremendously. And I think what you're starting to see now is the beginning of, I think, what Councilman Kluwat calls the ant piles, put the houses on them, where people are building up a great deal of dirt to put a house pad on. A bunch of in order to meet the elevation requirements put forth by FEMA. The problem that is presenting, besides future settlement and stuff because of subsidence in the grounds in Ascension Parish and in parishes surrounding our areas, is that drainage or lack of drainage and lack of runoff by adjoining property owners and such. In many places, they have a limit as to how much you can actually build up for individual houses. So we're looking at a proposal to limit that, and so that's where we're at right now. And so I've had a number of discussions with different councilmen and women, and they pretty much agreed that something needs to be done. The question is, how high do you go? And so that's where we are now. Ms. Castle.
Ken, I'd be happy to suggest that it needs to be less filled than I am tall. I am 5 feet tall, and
Half that amounts again.
you know, it just makes no sense to me that people are building little mountains to put their houses on and flooding their neighbors and silting in their neighbors' ponds, and it's just not a good situation. I certainly understand their need to be at the right elevation, but there are structural ways to do that today that are, from what I'm understanding, considered, you know, proper construction technology to make sure that the house is built up on piers in such a way that you don't have to build a 5-foot mountain, have the highest sea level in south side of Louisiana, south part of Louisiana to build a house. So would 4 feet be agreeable, or is it 3 feet? I mean, I'm 5 feet tall.
That's what discussion is. And in discussion with other contractors, and what was brought up before has been the number at about 3 feet, and that has, the experience in the past is that has not been acceptable at this time.
3 feet wasn't
You know,
acceptable?
The resistance was, 3 feet was not acceptable to go with. That's what it's been in the past. We're looking to try to get something that everybody will accept and move forward and try to get some standard at this point. So that's what the discussion is, and then also have the ability to enforce it, which if you're going to do this, you need to make some stipulations in there that there will be an inspection point, and it's give me some suggestions as to 4 different times that it would be as part of the inspection process, where the homeowner would be forewarned at the permit time, at the foundation inspection, they could check and see at the final occupancy, and then, just like everything else for the parish, at a complaint filed by the neighbor, and parish drainage would go out. So that's kind of what has been knocked around by different councilmen, and we wanted to hear everybody's opinion. Mr. Sadler?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to Councilwoman Castle's comments, I too, I can see how tall she is, don't know the correct number. But I'll say this. As a former P&Z commissioner, it was always difficult hearing people come in and say, well, with site prep, they built the elevation up so high, it flooded my property, and now isn't the parish liable? So first of all, I'm glad we're addressing some of this. I don't know what the existing situation is, what the number is, or if it's just going to be a new number, just put in there, whatever. But I can say this, if you go too high, for those who might be on this panel thinking that, it ought to suggest to you that you're allowing development of land that would otherwise be undevelopable. Glad I got that word out, which is like, maybe like sort of swampy land, et cetera. So I wouldn't support it to be too high. Again, I don't know the proper number, but maybe somewhere around 3 or 4 feet is correct. Do we have anybody here tonight that, from an engineering standpoint, that would want to address this committee on that number? Or I see a gentleman raised his hand back there. Is he just swatting flies, or is he being bashful?
I see one engineer in the, I see more than one engineer in the building.
Nobody wants to be stuck with the number, huh?
No, it's purely
Arbitrary, just,
I got a recommendation that I think may solve some of this issue for us. I think the 4 foot, I'm not happy with the 4 foot, but I think I can live with it. If we put a qualifier in there that says anything between 1 to 4 feet, a plan has to be submitted and approved by drainage that shows that they can do exactly what we talked about here, and that they can prevent that water from draining on a neighbor's property.
Oh, I like that.
And so when they come in and present for a permit, if they had inspection, if they have to raise if their required elevation is between 1 to 4 feet, they have to submit a plan at that point in time that says how they're going to control their drainage, their runoff, to where it doesn't impact their neighbor. And that plan be approved or at least accepted by drainage. And then from there, you have the other times that before the slab is poured, you can do your pre-slab inspection to see that they've done the work to make sure that that's going to be, sufficient. And then the final inspections like what you have here, final occupancy inspection. And I think the thing with that is I want to protect both sides of this. I know at least a couple friends of mine that have, gentleman that had his house destroyed during Gustav, that came back and had to raise his property at least 18 inches on the same spot that he was before. And another friend of mine that's building a house that, talking to the people around him, his neighbors are mad at him because he's had to go up, and I don't remember how high he's got to go up, but because of the requirements from FEMA on a lot that's never held water before, he's got to build up a couple of feet. And so I think if we can, but to satisfy those guys, to make sure that we don't put them in a catch-22, that we do a later inspection. If they're going in to bring all this dirt in, they get ready to pour the slab, and then we go in there to check it, and come to find out they can't meet it. We turn them down the ability to pour their slab. They done expended a whole bunch of money on dirt and work. So before they even get to that point, let's see some kind of a plan that does a couple of things. It protects them to say that they can go ahead and bring this in there and do it the right way and minimize the impact or eliminate the impact on the neighbors. And it also covers what we need to make sure that, you know, we're protecting the neighbors and allowing these folks to do the requirements that they have. Anything above 4 feet, no, they got to put it on piles. But anywhere between 1 to 4 feet, I know Mr. Parents is going to shoot a bunch of holes in this, but.
I'll make a suggestion that lot size be figured in too.
Well, we talked about that, and I mean, the thing about it, if you go on different slopes, because part of it is if you get into some of these smaller lots, 75-foot wide lot, and that's part of the reason why you see such large amounts of dirt being brought in, because you want enough of a slope to where you can at least walk on it or cut it with the grass. You don't want to build 5 feet up right there at the slab, and then you can't manage the rest of your lot and have a huge drop off. So I think part of that, I think the smaller the lot, I think this type of situation may govern that. If I got a 70-foot wide lot or 65-foot wide lot and I got to build it up 3 or 4 feet, it's going to be hard as heck for me to build some kind of a containment ditch or what have you that's going to handle all that runoff before it hits my neighbor's property, and it's going to eat up a lot of my property. So I may not want to do that. It may push me to the pile. If I got to go up 18 inches but my lot's only 60 foot wide, I may have to. It may behoove me to go ahead and do it on piles as opposed to dig that huge ditch on either side of my property and give up 7, 8 foot.
But on the other
Just to
side, you got
inform
the
it-
large lots. If somebody has a 3 or 4 acre lot, they don't.
Just to inform everybody, we may be redundant because we already have a requirement for the slope of your buildup that you have within the building of the parish. The amount of slope
Right.
that you can have from the building is part of your design. So we may be redundant. That would be what we don't have is that when they do meet those slope requirements,
Exactly.
they can drain up to the property line, and people immediately drain on someone else's property.
Exactly. That's what we're
And
trying to
so
cover
if we-
now is those gaps, right?
If the limitations you're putting that after 4 feet and not drain directly on the neighbor's property, everything else is taken care of. You know, if we can try to be as simple as possible.
I don't think it is. I mean, that's why we're talking about the issue that we have now. If everything up to 4 foot is taken care of, then we wouldn't be having some of the problems we got now. I think you've got somewhere in there that you've got to cover up to the 4 foot limit. If we're going to set 4 foot, if 4 foot is acceptable to a majority of all the folks that are going to be dealing with this issue, I think I don't have a problem with setting a 4 feet as max limit to build up to without setting piles. But if you've got to control that water. You're still going to have lot sizes that may be able to meet the slope and all that other stuff, but you're still going to put a whole bunch of water on your neighbor's yard. And we're running into these things in these older subdivisions or older areas to where folks have been there for going on 10, 15, 20 years, and now all of a sudden somebody's coming in there and building a house on an empty lot, and they're having to build up 3 or 4 feet. And it's something they got to do. They bought the property. They spent a bunch of money buying the property. In order, they want to do what they can with the property, but in order to get the permit to build a house on it, they're having to build up to meet the new flood requirements. And I think the restrictions we're putting on that, or we would put on something like what I suggested, I think it would work. The catch to it is going through the drainage guys and putting more work on them to go through and approve this plan. And then from a legal standpoint of view, what would that do to us as far as that kind of a thing? But other than getting those questions answered, I think it's a decent compromise.
What I was suggesting though is, I mean, in my subdivision, they got people who live on 8 acres. I mean, they can build their house up as high as they want. They'll let, you know, I don't think we should restrict those people who live there where you're not going to have any impact on your neighbor.
Well, I think it covers that, right?
that's-
If you can sit here and show somebody in drainage that you're going to prevent that impact from your neighbors, then
You can
whatever
go
you're
as high-
required to do, you can do. But I think if 4 foot, when you get above 4 foot,
You gotta
and
go
it-
do- okay,
you're
that-
going to be so large of a footprint that you're going to affect the drainage in that area. And I think like Councilman Sadler said as well, this going to a requirement to put piles in may open up some areas that aren't there for development at that point in time. That's my opinion.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up with the lot sizes. If at all possible, if we can have, all the lot sizes and to the field that, the 4 foot, I don't have a problem with that, but, a 75 by 100, we need something that's gonna, that we can go on that would, to get the water off of the driveways and the different things that it affects these other homeowners. And the other thing would be is the subdivision regulations. That's kind of the only thing that's catching me right now. I mean, you go in a subdivision that's 5, 10 years old, and you tell these people that you're going to put pilings up. These people have restrictions they have to follow, and what I'm looking for is just,
Well-
if you can make it look acceptable to the subdivision regulations, and they'll pass it, I don't have a problem with it.
Just to let it, this has nothing to do with subdivision regulation. This subdivision regulation is separate. That would
Okay.
be coming in a different category, which we can address time. But this is, at this
Well-
point in time, we're addressing individuals.
And that's where all
And
the
the
complaints are
subdivision
coming
would
from.
be-
So,
Well, I think in with the
And-
construction technology and everything that, it can make some houses look awful nice on
yeah,
top.
and that's just some of the
Doesn't
things
meet that
I'd
stuff.
like to bring out.
Mr. Kluart.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment on the subject that, I'm chairman of drainage right now, and that a lot of the calls we get on these build-ups, anthills, whatever you want to call them, isolated, that they go exactly to the property line, is we get calls in drainage. And I can tell you, the lady that answers the phone can't explain all the laws, okay? And it's even hard for some of the staff. So while Dempsey's talking about subdivisions, we do have instances in subdivisions. A lot of people think that when they live in a subdivision, then they live in a pretty organized world. We have a lot of subdivisions out there that have developed up long-term. Some lots have been left open. We have subdivisions that have taken as long to develop that they went through two different iterations of the 100-year flood stage in the FEMA maps, okay? So the guy that's building the house now is forced to build it higher, okay? And we're forcing him to, okay, through legislation, all right? But in the subdivisions, we do have cases where they are building up and they slanting right to their neighbor's lot, okay? I mean, there's no water gonna stay on their lot. Not a drop of water will stay on their lot, okay? So, whose responsibility is it to have some kind of little short ditch on the side or whatever to go to the front, back, wherever it's supposed to go? So it's not just an isolated rural problem. It's most evident in the rural areas, but we have instances where it's in the subdivisions. And we have a lot of subdivisions that have never developed their homeowners associations, okay? All right? And it's a big runaround. I don't think there's any one of you that don't have some subdivision homeowners association that done called you about the guy that built a tin shack behind his house and it was supposed to be a brick shed. You know what I mean? This is no different. So while we got this is a parish-wide issue, and basically in the flood areas for sure. So we've legislated people to build houses up this high. All right? So, we've got to come up with something workable that'll work within that.
Real
Thank-
quick, Mr.
can-
Chairman.
Yes.
Just
Thank
one
you.
other,
That's-
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kluart. Appreciate it.
thank you, Randy. The only other thing with the lot sizes, if we could have each lot size, the setback from the driveways or the property lines, I think that needs to be put in so that, our inspectors and other people will have something to go off of also.
I think it's pretty clear the direction
Yeah.
that would like to be headed. If given your permission, I can send this information to planning and drainage and get them to come back with recommendations to try to do what was suggested, to put that in correct wording, that it would fit into our codes, into our information, and come back next month with something that's definitive and is backed by our engineers and
You need a motion for that?
everything else, so.
I'll happily make a motion that we pursue this through the proper administrative channels to develop an ordinance to prevent the building of houses above 4 feet, or the fill of property above 4 feet.
And try to do the concerns the councilman up here expressed today. So we will express that to them, bring that to them, and see what they can come back with to, that it would fit. I want to make sure it fits within our guidelines.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to give this to administration to address and come back to us with proper wording and the next month's meeting. Any other discussion? If not, any opposition? No, we will do so. Next thing, number 6, recommendation regarding cell phone and other reimbursements. This is something that has been discussed. We found out actually last year that parish charter says that councilmen cannot be reimbursed for certain things without a policy by ordinance, and the council has never actually made an ordinance for reimbursables. It has been suggested to have reimbursables, one of the things for phone reimbursements, and the other was for office supplies and internet reimbursables with receipts, and to have a policy on that. And then this discussion was based on 2 different things, and then the personal use of the iPad. To have a policy on that, which has been given to us by the IT department. So your comments on that for us, a way to move forward on something like this. I think, Doc, you.
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, we've been talking about a lot of things, obviously, last time at this meeting, and I sort of led the discussion then, but we've talked a lot outside as well. I think what is currently being considered, and it's not set in stone, but here for discussion tonight, is phone reimbursement, provided that each and every councilman would provide a receipt for the same, not to exceed a maximum of $50 a month. Office supplies and internet is a combined area with receipts, again, to justify the same, not to exceed $50 a maximum per month. And I'll get to the iPad in a moment, because that's something that's owned by the parish. On these personal devices and so forth, I made a comment last time. I just want to reiterate for anyone listening out there that may have missed last time. Councilmen are sort of unique. At least I've experienced that as a newbie. I got to quit saying that. It's been 18 months now, but I'm no longer a freshman. I guess I'm in a sophomore year here. But my office is for all of us, our automobiles are, and I don't want to make this sound like a sexist comment, our man caves at home. Terry, that would be your lady cave.
That would be my husband's man cave.
Well, if your husband is like my wife, I'm sure he probably has some druthers about how the overwhelming amount of paperwork is sort of taking over one room in my house and so forth. And so the point being, we don't have offices that the parish pays, the utility bills, the lights, the office space, the computers, et cetera. We do a lot of our work, probably at least I do, 80-90% of it, on the road, going out looking at problems that our constituents call us about and so forth. These things are reimbursable. We're not inventing the wheel here, or even trying to reinvent it. Other parishes have it with various amounts of money that could be brought out of if necessary. And then, as the parish president said last time, the charter already provides for the fact that with receipts, this is all totally legal. So what we need, obviously, then is a policy, and a whole water now until we have discussion, and then maybe I or someone could go ahead and make that motion. We'll see what happens. Now, as to the iPad, it's a little bit different. That's issued by the parish, and I think we had agreed it's probably important in that discussion that we talk about what the IT department, Brandon O'Day, et al. Has come forward with. And with your forbearance, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and just read the paragraph to get it into the record if people at home can understand what's going on. The scope of this would be, and the title is Limited Personal Use of Government Equipment for the Ascension Parish Council. And the scope would be the Ascension Parish Council may use government-provided computers, internet, and other forms of information technology, such as tablets and mobile phones for their personal use on their own personal time, okay? and provided there is no additional cost to the government. I think that's key when you think about it, because those iPads, in order to keep the paperwork down, to get our agendas for the parish council committee meetings, the parish council regular meetings, et cetera, the idea was to cut down the paperwork. I understand there's been substantial savings there. But let's face it, the parish pays a set amount of money every month to do that, whether it's used exclusively for that purpose or otherwise. And so again, there's no reinvention of the wheel here. A lot of this scope information was taken out of information by the Department of Justice and the Department of Interior that Mr. O'Day shared with me early on. The second sentence says the Ascension Parish Council may make personal purchases using the above-mentioned government-provided technology, provided there is no additional cost to the government and that they send anything purchased to a non-governmental address. That's important, that last part, I think, because I've seen some cases where someone would be buying something instead of it coming to their home, and they would have bought it on their time using a personal device, a parish-issued device. It came to the parish. That becomes cumbersome and makes for problems. So it's stated here that that would be a no-no. The Ascension Parish Council is required, lastly but not least, to contact the Ascension Parish Technology Department immediately if any government-provided form of information technology is lost or stolen. And I believe they even have some poison pills in these machines to take care and protect that type of information. So what would be prohibited is specifically mentioned in this policy statement. The following activities are prohibited while using government-provided information technology. Gambling, that's sort of a no-brainer. The viewing or downloading of pornography, same comment can be had there. Campaigning, no use of the parish devices for campaigning or political activity, nor for fundraising. Also prohibited would be the conducting of commercial activities, such as maybe you day trade stocks or securities, real estate, et cetera. And the endorsement of any products, services, and organizations. And I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, and swing it for discussion.
Okay. Ms. Gazo.
I have very mixed feelings about this. I believe that while a policy does need to be put in place, I'm going to be very reluctant to support that at this point. I might be able to support it or it put in place in our next term. We were in the unfortunate position a year ago that this council made the decision, very, very difficult choice, to vote ourselves a raise. I believe that raise was substantial. It certainly was enough to cover $50 for a cell phone and an internet connection, which most of us already have in our homes. And we have, quite frankly, been disparaged from this podium for supporting that raise. And I've been personally offended and insulted by that, and I know others have. And now to turn around and talk about, taking more money out of the parish coffers comes as a shock to me. So unless this can be done in, as it was suggested, might have been more appropriately done when we gave ourselves a raise, and I didn't necessarily disagree with that. Unless this can be done for the next term, I'm not going to be able to support it.
Okay, any further comments? Discussion? Is there any motion on the subject?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we proceed with what's in our packet as far as the materials that I read,
Okay, there's a motion to
as a recommendation to the full council.
enter in to recommend to the full council what is,
Councilman, you're going to add that other
yes,
information.
what has been discussed and given out on the handout. With that went to legal, which is something that we didn't, that he added, and I apologize because we didn't have the copy machine wasn't working this afternoon. So I want to read you what Mr. Parrington has said to add on to anything like this. On public records disclosure, any council member that uses any equipment provided by the parish acknowledges that any information on such equipment may be subject to the public records doctrine. Prior to using government-issued technology equipment for personal use, a council member must agree to hold the parish harmless of any damage caused by them for any inadvertent release of private information. Should a public records request be made for information, it is the duty of each individual council member to screen their purely personal information. Should a violation of public records doctrine occur as a result of the council member's improper screening, council member agrees to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the parish for such violation. So it just says that basically if you use something like that, it holds the parish harmless if you're not disclosing the proper information. Just wanted to bring that to your attention, and that would be, if something would be passed, that would be passed along with.
Mr.
We have-
Chairman,
we have a
thank you for that.
motion.
And I'll go ahead and second that.
In a second.
Something to this level, I think everyone needs to know what's on this, and let them make the decision on it. So I'll support it, bring it to the council.
We have a motion and a second to bring it to the council. Any further discussion? Any objection?
Yes.
We have one objection. With that, this motion is passed on to the council for the next council meeting. Item number 7, motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by
Second.
Ms. Johnson, second by Mr. Lambert. This meeting is adjourned.